Hello everyone. In this podcast, I want to make another tool called a snapping tool. And this will allow you to move one tool to another position and delete the constraint or all the information we're going to do on that. So to start this off is I'm going to make another button here. Okay, I'm going to say label and I'm going to say snapping. Okay, and then you make a function for this. So I can actually minimize these by just hitting the little gutter area here, like that. And I can say def, and I can say snap to. Let's just call it snap. Okay. I'm going to say star args. It's going to connect onto a function. I can say print objects snapped. Okay. We're going to make our command flag C. Oh, let's first of all, didn't put a width in here. Say width 375. C, which is our command flag, is going to equal to snap. And just like everything else we've been doing on here, we're going to save this. And I'm going to run it. Let's go in. Okay, so let's say boom. There's our snap. And I said snap, and it says object snapped. Okay. So we need a tool to move one object to another object. And instead of making these little spheres, I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to make it bigger, like that. Okay? So I'm going to move that circle someplace else. It doesn't matter if it's frozen or not. So I want to take this object and move over here. I'm also going to elongate this so you can see an orientation on it too. Okay, I'm going to freeze that too. Okay, so this is going to be my driver, and this is going to be my driven. The reason why I'm talking in that sense is that I am going to use driver and driven. I'm going to use a constraint here. Okay, so to do a constraint, first we need to get our objects selected. So I'm going to say pretty much pm.ls, and I'm going to do sl equals true, just like I did in the renamer, like that. Okay, and this is going to return back our items. But the important thing here is that when I print out my items, and I save this, when I run it, like this, it's going to give me the order that they're currently selected. It says NURB circle 1, and then NT transform. Like, so here we got we got NURB circle 1, and we got our left bolt 1 geo. Okay, so this will be our driver and just driven. It's important to understand this list here. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about lists here in the process of it. So when I have this, I'm going to put this as a comment so you can see it. What it's saying is that this is our first index, and this is our second index. So it starts counting at 0 on here. So if I want to refer to the first item, that's going to be 0, and then the second one's going to be 1. And the reason why I say this is I'm going to say my driver is going to be my items 0 index. That's what the brackets are. It's telling you the first item, and my driven is going to be items 1 on there. So I'm identifying my driver and my driven in this case. Actually, I did want my print above this. So I'm just going to cut this out, Command X, and put that there. Oops, we're indented over. So let's bring this back so it's right like that. Okay. So this isn't really doing anything more as in what the user is seeing, but it allows us to organize our information. Because I could use items 0 and items 1 directly, but the problem here is that when you see driver and driven, it makes a little more sense of what you're connecting. So our final area here is just to do a constraint. So let's say we only want to do a position. We don't want to rotate it. We just want to translate it. So then I can say pm.pointConstraint, open and close parentheses. Now this goes based on selection right now, but I don't want to go based on selection. If you use a point constraint or orient or parent constraint, by default, if you don't put anything in the flags, it moves with currently selection, which seems like, hey, that's fine on here. It is, but I want you using the variables because that's gonna give you more options later on. So in this case, I can say driver, comma, driven here because it's the same order here as your selection. By the way, the selection order is the same order of the flags, these commands. Your Maya is reflecting the commands, not the other way around. So the way you've been doing things in Maya is how the commands are built. So I save this, and now when I run it, let's go back here, and I run my code, double play, watch. Ploop, snaps it up. Now, that's the same exact thing of going in and going up to constraints and doing a point constraint. So what's the benefit here? Well, the benefit here is it's annoying to have to go in and constantly delete this constraint over and over and over again. I'm going to do that right now. Oops, I hit save. No. Hit Command Z. Undo that so it goes right back. Am I on tab? Nope. Okay, so let's just delete that constraint by hand. For some reason, it's not going back any further. And I will zero this out. So it goes right back. Okay, so we're going to grab our driver and our driven again. But this time now, I'm going to close this. What we're going to do is this command catches something. It creates something and then you can catch it. Sorry, I said catch it. It creates something and you can actually catch it in something. So if I type in here like Kenny, this is actually going to be the name of the thing we created. Now, why am I doing Kenny? Because what happens in South Park at the end of Kenny? Kenny dies. So if I go down to the next line, I say pm.delete, and inside the prints here, I type in Kenny, it's going to kill Kenny in the process. So I'm going to save this, I'm going to run it, and now watch. Let's see, a double play. I go in here, I hit my button, book, and you see it looks like nothing's happened. So I can go through and I can go in here, boom, snap. And it seems very small of a basic thing to do, but it's a pretty powerful thing. Then I can start doing stuff like this where I orient it. Now I want it to orient instead. So let's say I wanted to have it, I want to do it this instead. Now normally what I do is say driver and driven. I would actually make another tool for this, but I'm just going to do this really easily. So I'm just going to change from point to parent on here. So normally I do have multiples on here. I have a point, I have an orient, I have a parent. I do different things that move them and organize them in a different way. So now I make sure I saved. I'm going to have to run my code again. Okay, so I hit my button, boop, and it snaps. See? Some things I want to orient, some things I don't. And that actually works really, really nice. This can be also done because one of the really nice advantages of your constraints is to snap in between two objects. So you can make it where you could select two vertices and it can actually snap between those. So you can get things centered on here. This is the beginning of me doing auto rigging systems, because a lot of times I'm creating controls like for the back, I'm creating circles and snapping them into position onto them. So this is one of those tools I'll use to do that because I don't need the residuals and all the other stuff. And yes, there's other more complicated ways of doing this, but this is very fast. It was only a few lines of code to do this and it worked. I actually really don't need this print statement anymore on here. And this is pretty much done. So here's a really nice snapping tool. And like I said, it's very easy to duplicate this multiple times for different versions of snapping tools that work maybe on selecting vertices compared to just objects and things like that. So